Welcome to the Six-Figure Author Experiment, where we help you break through your first or next $100,000 goal. Parental discretion is advised. Now, let's get on with the show.
Hey, everybody. It's Lisa Vino. I'm here with Russell Nolte and the Theodora Taylor, known as T. Taylor to those of us who have her seven-figure fiction book and tons of bookmarks in it on our Kindle. Theodore, will you introduce yourself just a little bit?
Oh, well, I am Theodora Taylor. I am a best-selling, Amazon top 10 best-selling romance writer in a niche genre. But one of the things I'm most proud of is being a somewhat chaotic creative who does not necessarily make the best business moves, but still makes enough money to support her family of 5 because of Universal Fantasy, which is a framework, an audience first, I guess you would call it, framework that I teach.
I love it. And I love your course. And I really wanted to teach a concept that you cover right in the beginning of the seven-figure course that you teach. And I think it actually ties into what Russell wants to talk about, which we were talking about, choosing joy in the new year, choosing joy in our creative life. And it's this concept of butter sponsors. Can you explain some of it to us?
So hang on, wait. Before we do butter sponsors, can you just talk slightly about what Universal Fantasies are and then talk about butter sponsors?
We went right into it.
I just assume everyone knows what's going on. Okay.
No, not everyone knows. It's funny. Okay. Every so once, I just taught a whole workshop on this, and people are like, "Oh, that was great! I've never heard of you before." So it was great to know that there are always authors who aren't necessarily familiar with Universal Fantasy yet. So I always say that Universal Fantasy is trope adjacent, but is not trope. So universal trope. A trope is a trope like, say, Beauty and the Beast, Fish Out of Water, Cinderella, but Universal Fantasy is what makes that trope delicious. For example, if we're breaking down Beauty and the Beast, we have a few Universal Fantasies going on, and these are the themes that kind of resonate with audience because they are, if not a personal fantasy, but kind of these fantasies that we share or that are pretty universal. So in Beauty and the Beast, we have, first of all, the biggest one is probably fixer-upper. You have someone who's literally a beast who must be healed by love. So you have a big before and after picture. We also have surprise, bully really likes you. So that's the fantasy of when someone who's being really mean to you, or, and this also fuels enemies to lovers, someone who's being really mean to you deep down inside where you can't see it actually really likes you. So, and we also have my favorite that is that you see in a lot of things, even outside of romance. And that's why I call it provincial life pull. And that's when you're bopping about in your regular life. It's ill-fitting for some reason. It's provincial, this provincial life. Although anyone who's been to the province of France knows it's actually quite gorgeous. But, in this case, in the Beauty and the Beast case, someone pulls you out of your provincial life into an adventure, into a love story, into some kind of, I just started reading Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinneman, and it has such a great provincial life pull where he's pulled out of his regular life where he's just had a breakup into what feels like it's maybe like a D&D level video game, that reality show kind of thingy. So that pull from your provincial life, that's another big universal fantasy. So
I was thinking all of Portal Fantasy.
Yeah, all of Portal Fantasy.
Anything with the chosen.
So the universal fantasy of being pulled out of your humdrum life into this.
So I love it. And I think I assumed everyone knew you because if you write dark romance, you're basically writing Beauty and the Beast over and over and over again. So your breakdown and description of it was so fun. I love story. I love reading stories. That's how I learn. And you go straight to the source. And then we all get to talk about the stories that we love so much. So
yes.
I really, this morning, told someone to go to your Substack because they said, I'm writing French billionaires. I need to watch Emily in Paris. I said, just go see what Theodora broke down about the show first, you know? And I just love it. So I really am excited to share and teach this concept of butter sponsors because this has actually really reinvigorated my writing. I'm 100 titles in. I've been doing this for 10 years. And I am so excited to keep doing it. And it's because a couple years ago, I was stuck and I felt like, okay, it's the 7-year itch. I need to like reinvigorate my career 7 years in. And I know Julie Cameron in The Artist's Way says, go on an artist date, go take time out of your schedule to be creative, do something that fuels you and really fills the well. And all my friends were talking about burnout and needing to fill the well. So I ended up at a comic book shop and, you know, kinky Batman, kinky Harley Quinn. I mean, Harley Quinn is already kinky, obviously, inspires me in many ways. And, you know, just wrote Kinky Poison Ivy. And I'm mining stories that I love and putting my own spin on it and twists and making them into mafia arranged marriage romance because I love that. It's basically Beauty and the Beast, right? And it's just amazing. And I'm realizing that I'm always creating playlists before I write the book, finding even just a song. Some short stories, it's like, this is one song and I will play it on loop.
Yes.
And once I have played it 1,000 times, maybe that's an ADHD thing, but I'm like 1,000 times.
No, I also have ADHD, but at the same time, I also do that. I love a butter what I call like kind of a butter sponsor. A butter sponsor, if we're going to define it, can be anything that inspires you. It's like, hey, I want the mood of that song. I want the that song. When I teach my butter blurbs masterclass, one of the things I talk about is a book that's ostensibly about like a Scottish billionaire tech werewolf, as you do. But one of the sponsor songs for it is Missionary Man, because I like the feeling of, oh, there's this mysterious guy. He's dangerous somehow. And it just, in the butter I want from that song, even though, you know, it's called Missionary Man and ostensibly I'm assuming about a missionary man. I want that meeting someone who, you know, is going to be dangerous for you or is mysterious in some way. So grabbing the butter like that.
Okay, hang on one second. Hang on, because we've said butter like 800 times, and I know what butter is, you know what butter is, but like I'm guessing someone listening is like, why are they saying the word butter in all of these things? So like maybe we should define butter for people in the context of universal fantasies, because I think it will inform the rest of this.
So the butter of a universal fantasy is kind of all the stuff that makes that universal fantasy taste good. So universal fantasy is kind of like saying, okay, oh, and then you season it. This is all the seasoning and the trope. This is all the ingredients that are going into this trope meal. And then the universal fantasy is kind of the butter of the universal fantasy is what provides the flavor, the heart, the whatever. So, you know, if we go back to Beauty and the Beast and it's bully really likes you, like, you know, the butter of that, what I would call spreading the butter of that is having him be very, very mean to you. So like those cruel moments where they say something mean to you, like, okay, if you won't eat with me, starve. And so we're being really set up for that great scene where not only does he eat with her, but he tries to have good manners, and then he gives her a library. So this is kind of the butter of getting the universal fantasy is not just any gift, the right gift. And the butter is that actual library. That it's that surprise of that he really saw her and stuff like that, that he gave her the exact right gift, the thing she didn't have before. She's reading, this poor woman is reading, any reader feels her plight. She doesn't have any books. She
ran out of books.
She's in this nightmare of having to reread the same 5 books that is in, as one of the few literate people in this entire village. She's in this nightmare scenario of having to reread these same 5 books and just check them out and recheck them out. And then he gives her a whole library that you couldn't possibly read in a lifetime. And so it's just kind of like, oh, that's butter. Like the library is the butter. The universal fantasy is getting not just any old gift, but the right gift, which therefore proves that guy or this love interest, man, they really see you.
It's a setup and payoff situation. And so many of us, we set stuff up and we need to make sure we really, really pay it off. And that movie and that story does that. And as someone who tends to twist tropes and use tropes like a shared language that everyone already knows, like I have done in this, hosting this podcast, where Russell's like, wait, that's not how you host. You have to start from the beginning. But I tend to be like, oh, there's only one bed. That's the trope. Okay, there's only one bed. And he sleeps on the floor. That's not the trope. That's not the fantasy. It's that they end up in the bed together or they end up on the floor together because she has a nightmare and he must save her and cuddle her or whatever.
Yes.
And that is what readers are looking for. It makes it delicious. The difference between eating cake and cake without butter, which is, I don't know, flour.
Flour and eggs.
Totally. One bed is one of my favorite tropes. I don't write it very often, but I love to see it in a movie. I will never, or another book, I will never get tired of it. Where it's just kind of like, well, we're going to have to sleep in the same bed. We have forced proximity, and forced proximity, of course, is the trope. But the universal fantasy is having to be close, like physically close to someone who, makes you nervous, who you don't like, but, potentially this could turn into love.
Yeah, I like to think of it like the Spinal Tap, where it's like this thing goes up to 11.
Yeah.
And it's like the butter, because like when I consult with a lot of authors, they're like, I don't understand why people aren't like obsessed with this. And I was like, well, you checked all the boxes, but like this forced proximity, shared bed is not like 11. It's like 4. And so like the butter is like, okay, I have to set up all of the pieces knowing this is going to happen. If I'm going to not just set up and pay off, I have to like set it up at an 11 and pay it off at an 11 because like if I wanted to resonate with all these people.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I loved when Lee was talking about, oh, she has a nightmare. I like when he has a nightmare.
Yeah, that's
I love when he has a nightmare.
Wounded warrior. Wounded warrior and my love. Yes.
Psychologically wounded, and she has a chance to nurse him or comfort him, or he confesses a secret or something like that. Like, so that's butter. That's but what you're talking about with my students, half the time when I do, like, say, a butter beginnings salon, most of my notes are, okay, like this, what you have, even more so, make it very specific. Like, it's just kind of like, oh, if he has, it's not just them sleeping in one bed. Like, that doesn't have a lot of butter. That's just forced proximity. It's the, trying not to touch him. It's the having a nightmare or ending up in their arms despite your best efforts to not being in their arms. Like, it's the will they or won't they of it. It's the what you're kind of talking about is something I really, really preach, that if you're going to set up a like buttery situation, you don't have to call it universal fantasy. You can call it trope. But if you're going to set up the one bed trope, have intentions when you're going in. Don't just say, oh, and then they had to share a bed.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you want your audience to feel about this? How do you want this, how do you want your characters to feel here? Do you want them to feel nervous? Do you want them to, um, be fighting this attraction? Do you want one of them, so just
Right.
have real intentions and know how you want to, having them only have one bed is the spread of it. Know how you want to bake it and know how you want to serve.
Yeah,
serve it.
absolutely. I would also say that, like, just if you guys are familiar with my author ecosystems framework, like Theodora Taylor is Queen Forest, which is why Forrest like Lee love her. Well, besides that, everyone loves Theodora, but like Lee is like, but I want you to more than that. Do you remember when this? If you're watching this in video, then you can picture about 3 to 5 minutes ago when they were talking about these tropes and like they were giddy like this, like they were without even, they didn't
Russell's
even.
waving his hands around.
Yes, exactly. There we go. Thank you. They were, but like that is what you're talking about with tropes and universal fantasies. And like when you want people to resonate deeply with your work, like this is when you want people to one click buy it, like it's all of this stuff is like, okay, if I can pull off the like guy, wounded warrior, like all of these things that they're talking about in this one trope, then like people are going to fall in love with the book. They will not have any choice but to fall in love with it because they already love it.
And the reason we don't is because our writing professors or somebody was like, well, that's cringe. And you need to let yourself love what you love and choose joy.
Yep. And it's funny because the one question, and I don't teach the actual workshop much anymore, the original Universal Fantasy Workshop, because a lot of people do know about it, but often some conferences who are hosting newer writers will say, hey, come teach this whole concept. And the number one question I get every time I teach the universal fantasy classes, well, how do you know when it's too much butter? And I'm always just like, worry that it's not enough. Like, start there. Worry that it's not enough. And I think it's because, professors are in your head. They're always like, don't go too far and stuff like that. And so, especially in romance, I think we are so scared of falling into purple prose. We're just like, oh no, I hope I don't fall into purple prose. But it's just kind of like, is that as bad as it not resonating?
Yeah, tapping into the emotions is more important. I've been studying K-pop demon hunters, and they're like, a lot of this dialogue is on the nose. A lot of these songs are telling.
Yes.
But they're also showing, and there's so much setup and payoff within the first 8 minutes that you don't care. You're like, I trust these storytellers. Let them take me where I want to go.
Yes.
The child can understand this.
Yes.
And the adults can tell that there's depth. Right. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, as long as I'm tapping into the emotion, it doesn't matter if I show or tell or ideally do both. I just need the emotion. Just go for the emotion and dial it up to 11.
Yeah.
No, I think especially in this age of social media, like K-pop Demon Hunter resonates even more with us because the idea of hiding this secret, presenting one way, but feeling another way inside. I really felt like it tapped into this kind of universal fantasy of showing who you really are and being accepted. Like, it's just like, yeah, I have this demon inside me, but my friends still accept me. That's a spoiler. I hope you've seen K-pop Demon Hunter, but that you're still accepted. So I felt that was so chock full of butter in universal fantasy, but at the same time, it's just like, but she also has cool hair.
Yeah, right. And they're great and great, like just a great aesthetic look, all of them, and very different look. One thing that I will say, if you're a nonfiction writer, is a lot of times people like an article can only be 800 words. And I'm like, your articles can only be 800 words. My articles can be 10,000 or 100,000 words. And then they'll stay put because like they just want to be like, if you can pull off these emotional butter moments, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, if you can that's how you keep people invested in the story. And yes, you don't want to write 10,000 words about like how to use Substack notes, but maybe you do. Like if you can make it compelling, like
if you're accessing emotion and you're solving a problem and the main emotion is relief and I can do this.
Right. It's like, this is a you problem. Like things can be as long as someone is interested in continuing to read for.
Yes.
And like the butter in all of these universal fantasy things is one way that you can make them like stick around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So should we talk about butter sponsors now? I think we got it. We got butter. We got universal fantasies.
We got it all.
Now we can go back to butter sponsors.
It's just about choosing that joy and choosing that love. And I love it because let's say you chose the song for Her Scottish Wolf and it was Missionary Man. And when you listen to Missionary Man, you're feeling the feelings that you want to put in the book. So you're just getting right to the emotion. Yes. So for me, I wanted this like Gothic world and this feeling of inevitability and this tortured hero who's from a wounded past, the whole like Batman origin story. And then he meets, this woman who can save him from his darkest demons, basically. And so, yeah, of course I had the whole, Hans Zimmer soundtrack that I could listen to. And I watched The Batman, which has a very noir, old-timey feel. And it was fun and it was generative because it was like, our minds are always working on our story in the background, right? That's why you take a shower and you're like, oh, the hero says this.
Absolutely this, yes.
So I'm listening and I see, and then I go and I watch, of course, the YouTubers break the movie down. And they say, Genu in K-pop Demon Hunters, he's wrestling with shame. And when he has this conversation with the main heroine, he allows her to comfort him, but he doesn't think he's deserving of it on his own. And that's his big wound. So I rushed to my notebook and I'm like, that's my next hero. Now it's not going to be anything like that universe. It's, he is going to look like him, but
he's so cute. Why not?
Why not? And there's no singing, maybe. Yes. I don't know. If I can pull that off, I will. But there's a spark to the story. And now I'm going into my story and I have this list of ideas. I have a soundtrack and it's putting me in the story and it's reminding me of the most important thing of the story which is the emotion. That's why I love it.
So I love butter sponsors because it just kills all pre-writing anxiety. Like I'm always just kind of like, you'll have a big idea maybe. And for me, sometimes I'm just kind of like, oh no, how am I going to pull it off? How am I going to pull it off? And I'll spend weeks, not anymore, but before Universal Fantasy, I would spend weeks being like, I don't know if I can pull this off. I don't know what I'm doing. And then that's a really great time to identify a butter sponsor. When you have like, just a nugget of idea, you don't know how you're going to pull this big idea off. And you're just like, well, I know the trope is like Beauty and the Beast. So let's go rewatch Beauty and the Beast and see what I can pull out of Beauty and the Beast, what universal fantasies I can pull out of Beauty and the Beast that can also go into my book. I love that you talked about Batman because I honestly feel not enough people talk about how Batman, I think, is responsible for a lot of billionaire romances. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I also say this about Sons of Anarchy because I think people were so frustrated with the ways that Sons of Anarchy handled the romance, and by handled I mean didn't really have a romance that we could root for all the time, that they were just like, I'm going to go write my own MC romance, which sparked all these MC romances. And so with Batman, you do have this situation where he's emotionally wounded and he's dark and he's broody and, and he's alone. What he really needs, like when you look at him, is a relationship, a family, someone to fill that void. And he's doing it by fighting crime and by doing all this other stuff. But really what we I think, especially if you're a romance writer, what you want for Batman is for him to heal the wounds inside of him. And the perfect way to do that, if you're a romance writer, is with a really, really great relationship. And so I love that he's so emotionally wounded. He's one of the most emotionally wounded um, heroes out there. And the issue with superheroes is that they have to stay the superheroes. So they can never, he and Catwoman can never just be like, okay, we're happy, we're good, we're healed, because they have to come back for another adventure. But the nice thing about romance is that we're in the business of, hey, let's take this and make it an HEA. So sometimes I think of it as the HEA game, because a butter sponsor doesn't have to be another romance. It doesn't have to be something with a happy ending. It can be Batman. It can be you saying, okay, I love this emotionally wounded titan of industry. What can I have him doing that's avoiding this emotional wound or trying to fit this? How can I have him falsely trying to fill this emotional wound? How can I have her come in? How can I have this love heal this? How can I, get this guy who's been severely emotionally wounded to a happy ending?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, okay, I know the answer to this, but I still want you to say it because other people won't know the answer to it, which is like what we've been talking about can feel to some people listening, maybe that it's like very paint by numbers. It's like, okay, I have a universal fantasy and I do like this thing. I put butter in it. I do all of these things. And so like, can you talk a little bit about how we can do this organically in our story or like how we can like add this as like a organic element?
So with the paint by numbers thing, what I kind of like to remind myself is that I forgot what the fact is about Legos, but if you have like a set of Legos, you can put them together in some, not infinite, but insane, like an insane amount of ways you can make this Lego work. And so I think that's why, with romance, we'll be like, oh, that's a Beauty and the Beast, and that's a Beauty and the Beast, and that's a Beauty and the Beast. But it's not necessarily the same, right? It's not the same Beauty and the Beast, just kind of like, it's not necessarily the same Beauty and the Beast. So I would say really follow your intuition and really realize, like, for example, Lee and I love dark romance, and I have plenty of friends who will not, romance writer friends who are just like, I'd rather do a friends to lovers. I won't touch that. Da da da. So my butter isn't necessarily going to be your butter or the butter I like to work with, because I'll read a friends to lovers, I'll listen to I'll watch a friends to lovers, but I don't really prefer to write a friends to lovers. So I think everybody brings something special to it that's your butter, like your author butter. I call my main characters quirky, but really what it is like observationally funny with really low self-esteem.
Yep.
So that's what I bring to my characters. And I think a lot of women have low self-esteem, and I think a lot of women are observationally funny. So it's just like, oh, that's a butter that I'm going to add to most of my characters. It's very hard for me to write someone who's kind of like boring or, or just kind of a straight man and isn't this kind of character, because that's the kind of butter that I season with. I season her with a little observational humor, acerbic clapbacks, and I season her and I give her flavor by having her, always believe what you would believe if you had very low self-esteem, like, oh, he doesn't really like me, da da da. And so, that's the butter I bring to it. But like I would say there was this old Sophie Lark book. I think it was maybe her first one. And she has this heroine who's just very confident, very brash, says it like it is, has it has very, very high self-esteem, that works too. So it's just kind of like whatever your personal butter is, which is why I always say, if you think that's hot or if you think that's interesting, somebody else will too. Like it can all be butter. It can all resonate with an audience.
Right. But there is butter that like, or there is, what I like of it is I like frameworks and
Mm.
guides. And so it's like, well, if you're going to write an enemies to lovers book, you don't have to. But if you're going to write an enemies to lovers book, it should feel like an enemies to lovers book and
Yes.
satisfy the people that
Yes.
are enemies to lovers fans.
Yes. My editor, I once got in so much trouble because I had this character where I kept on saying, everyone was like, he's a monster. He's a monster. He's a monster. And then when they would get into a scene together, he would just kind of back down because that would be too far. And my editor was like, well, if you're going to say he's a monster, he has to be a monster. Like if you're going to have a bully, he has to bully her. Like Beast cannot not yell at her through the door, then starve. Like we need to see him being beastly in some sort of way. So I do absolutely agree with that. Like if it's enemies, it can't be like, oh, I really hate him, but I won't say it out loud because that's not what you do politely. It's just like, no, get in there, squabble, like have that conflict, really do what you came here to do.
Yeah, I think some of this is a lot of college professors are teaching literary fiction, which is very quiet conflict.
Mm.
And, our genre fiction is really about conflict front and center. The pacing of a thriller and the conflict in the first few chapters is going to be so different than a literary fiction novel that's quieter and it's about, generational trauma or something like that.
Mm.
And what's unsaid at the family holidays. But I do think, returning to your point, Russell, where you're like, this feels paint by numbers. It's like, well, you need to trust, this is where your ego gets in the way. And you're like, I want to do something only, something no one else has done. And it's like, you know what no one else has done? Be you.
Yes.
No one's been you.
Yes.
And all of us can be sold, write a haiku, write a sonnet. And you're like, well, I want to do something different. I want to do, it's like, well, what if you wrote the sonnet, but only you wrote that sonnet? And it's 14 lines and iambic pentameter, but it's going to be completely different from anyone else's sonnet because you wrote it. It will be terrible if I write it. That's why I write Beauty and the Beast over and over again, because I have written that over and over again. And the characters feel different every time.
Yeah.
The characters have slightly different wounds. And in fact, if we all set out to write spicy Batman romance, we would all come up with very different novels. I can
literally you could run the experiment and it would be shocking how different that novel would be between 5 different writers with 5 different sensibilities, even if you gave them as the mother, I have twins. And so it's always just shocking to me how different they are, because it's just kind of like, oh, no matter what, if you raise them exactly the same, they're still like a different composite of DNA, and they'll look at the same experience and they'll receive it differently, and that's just the way it is. We're all different people, and what you bring to this is valuable in some way.
Yeah, so I would say now I'm going to play the other side of the thing because I love structure. So like to me, I would say if someone's like, I don't want to write a sonnet, I don't want to write a haiku, I'd be like, okay, like what do you want to write? And like, what is the form that like fit the thing? You want to write like this kind of thing? Awesome. Like, is there a comp that like is this kind of poem? And
Yes.
like maybe
and that's a better sponsor. You're
Right.
finding a comp. You're basically
Right.
finding a comp, but in any media. It can be a book. It can be a book, and you actually tell them, find a book you wrote in your backlist, if possible, or an idea for a story. And it's like, oh, that's similar. And a song, and the letter F. I don't understand that one. You explained it in the course, but I thought that was
I promise you I don't remember what I said.
You were inspired by the letter F. I was like, you know what? She finds inspiration everywhere. And
oh no, yeah. That's a whole thing that we won't go into on the thing. But I love the alphabet. And what I've noticed is a lot of writers do this, where every letter in the alphabet has its own personality. So that's when I say I'm inspired by the letter F. It's just kind of like, oh, because, F's the son of G and H. They're worried about him. He has a lot of issues, but and stuff like that. So I assume that all of these letters have like some kind of personality based on where they are in the alphabet. They have parents. Often the parents are the alphabet, or maybe, like L is a supermodel. Stupid. But I think I've heard once or twice of other authors like just really assigning personalities to the letters. And, so maybe you're inspired by this, maybe you're inspired by that. With butter comps and butter sponsors, they're a little different. Butter sponsors are, so Beauty and the Beast, I would call one of my biggest butter sponsors. If I'm writing a dark romance, there's going to be some aspect of that book in there. But for example, with Scottish Wolf, which was a secretary romance, I was just kind of like, okay, you need to find your butter comps. And so one of my butter comps is Iron Man, because there's a relationship between the boss and the assistant. But I took nothing from Iron Man. There was no like, oh, I like the butter in this Iron Man. All I know is that, hey, people do kind of like these assistant boss romances. Maybe it's not the same as yours. It's kind of like, oh, you can do a fish out of water butter, but you can take that fish out of water butter from, like, say, Cousin Vinny, where you prove that you're very competent. Or you can take it from Doc Hollywood, which is this old Michael J. Fox movie that a lot of our younger listeners might not have ever heard of. But Doc Hollywood is about a plastic surgeon whose car breaks down in a random small town, and he's taken down a few pegs by the locals. He thinks he's this big hotshot. And so that's a fish out of water. And then, you have fish out of water, Karate Kid, which I call my version, the Jaden Smith version, which I call Kung Fu Kid, just to distinguish it, where he's a fish out of water in China, being a Black kid in China, and he becomes very competent at this. So, these are all butter comps if you're talking about a fish out of water. But your butter sponsor is, well, which of these things have butter that I'm going to take? Hero taking down a peg, which we love to see, like a boss hole kind of redeemed. Am I going to take that? It's usually going to be the Doc Hollywood. But if I'm writing a mystery novel, I probably want to take the Cousin Vinny route, where it turns out that this person's very competent, and there you go.
Yeah, like Columbo.
Yes.
Probably another thing that people don't know. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is and if you're going to take that route of taking the Doc Hollywood, or you should just do it at an 11. Do it at an 11, do it in your version of an 11, because that is why, the Doc Hollywood works still today, because, it's, so very fish out of water. They, made it. They did put all of the pieces in there I don't remember the movie, but they had the thing where he was he had to wait for another week, and then he had to get back because of one thing. He had a deal or something that he was going to need to get back for, and then he had a love interest in the thing, and he had to make the decision at the end to stay. It's so. It was its own version, but they just went. If you're gonna use the thing, use the thing. Don't make sure it is fully implemented.
Yes, yes. I like to call that. Can you make it really? So if you're writing a character and they're funny and they have a line and it's funny, it's like, is there any way to make this really funny? Like, can you make them really evil? I really love a cartoonishly evil villain. It's like a villain hero, especially if they're just being ridiculous and over the top. Can you make them over the top? Can you do this? But there's something to be said for subtlety. I'm trying to think of someone who's like very subtle.
I think that subtlety is more important probably in like movies than books. Like you can go because of your reading it, you can go so much further over the top, I think, in books than
I
in
think
like a TV show.
I think though, like Joffrey in Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
like he wasn't a funny, campy Bond villain. He was pretty Bond villain though. Like he was pretty over the top, just not in a fun, campy way.
Yes.
But you couldn't wait for him to be on screen because you wanted to know what happened next. And I just watched a little bit of Yellow Jackets. There's a psychotic character, and you're like eating popcorn whenever she's on screen. Like, when is she coming back to be unhinged? And I actually don't know if she's the villain. No spoilers. Like, that there's all sorts of moral ambiguity in that show. So, yeah, but she is over the top in the best way, in her own way. And I think you can have a more subtle hero or subtle villain, but they're just so evil and they're so purposeful. And it might not be, I mean, Thanos kind of, because everyone's kind of buying into what he's even saying, even to this day. And you could put him in a quieter novel, but with the same awful mindset, and it'd be very scary and very over the top. Like, what? Disappear half the people? That's what you want to do. That's what you want to spend your time doing.
Yeah.
Snap is a big,
And you believe it'll save us to the point where there are Reddit boards where people are like, Thanos was right though. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I actually have a great example from recent. If you guys have not seen Anniversary, a very subtle villain movie, but like the things that persist throughout the movie like are very big. Like the character herself, themselves is like very subtle, but like the change that's enacted around them is like enormous. So, I could talk to you all day, to both of you all day, but I want to work towards wrapping up. So, Lee, are there any other things that you want to touch on before we get out of here?
No, you proposed the question, like, how do we keep doing this? How do we find joy as creatives in 2026 in this economic and political climate? And I really think that it's as simple as go on an artist date, find your butter sponsors, find what's sparking your creativity, and record them, like put them on a list and refer to it.
Yeah. Well, and don't say no to them.
And say yes to them.
I also love leaning into my job. It's interesting. I kind of think of it as like your James Brown moments. So somewhat famously, after I want to say MLK died, they were afraid there would be riots, so they brought in James Brown to like entertain and soothe and like provide something else for people and provide distraction for people. And you can go both ways about it. Like, oh, people shouldn't be distracted and stuff like that. But in uncertain times, I use COVID a lot. Like, when people are upset and there's not a lot people can do, one of the things, we're very lucky to do what we do because one of the things we can do is entertain and be an entertainer and lean into it and really have fun. Which is another reason I love Butter, because, we're talking about audience intention. So I love writing and thinking, oh, when they do, this is the moment where they're going to kick their feet. They're going to be like, or they're going to be so mad. They're going to throw their Kindle across the room. They're going to be so mad. They're going to be so mad. So I think one of the things that brings me a lot of joy, and, I always say, even if you only have 5 people on your Patreon, start a Patreon, because it's very joyful to be like, oh, to see that in real time, to see them be like, oh no, what's he gonna do next? Or, oh, I'm so mad at this hero. I'm so mad at him. He's pissing me off. He shouldn't have even done that. And then have them be like, oh, I guess he made up for it and stuff like that. So it's really great to really think about your audience, really find the joy of being an entertainer. Because my daughter plays the trumpet in jazz band, and we went to a performance of theirs at in front of a Dunkin' Donuts, and I didn't know what she was going to play. And she played, one of the songs they played was Thriller. And I realized something. I was like, you got to play the horns on Thriller. And everyone who's listening to this knows what I'm talking about. You got to play the horns on Thriller. Imagine the rush of joy that goes in and they do, you can't see me, but they do this thing where it's like, Thriller,
Right.
They're dancing and they're playing and they're ostensibly entertaining, but imagine the joy that's rushing through her body as she blows into this trumpet and plays the notes for Thriller, and the music's all around her. And as writers, that's what we get to do. We get to create this. We get to create this kind of joy. We get to have this kind of fun by presenting these stories to audiences. We get to entertain. So when we talk about, oh, I'm doing this again in 2026, oh, wow. Think about it like you're Beyonce and you're doing the Cowboy Carter tour in 2026. All these people are going to come out to watch you entertain them. How are you going to entertain them? What are you going to do? Are you going to have your kids come out on stage? Are you going to have this kind of character? What are you going to do? What's your Rockstar tour for this year? So that's how I find joy. And I'm always so excited about the incoming slate, because it's like, oh yeah, I get to entertain for 2026.
I love it. That sounds like a great place to end it. Lee, any final words? You want to take us home?
Just choose joy and read Theodora Taylor.
I love it. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks for coming, Theodora.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. For more, head on over to sixfigureauthorexperiment.com for archive access, resources, and more. We'll see you next time.